Hello there. Can't hear you. I don't know if you can hear me. If you can, do a thumbs up. See, it just says that your video's not on. Now it says you're connecting to audio.
Hello.
Hello there.
How's it going?
Can you hear me? Let me make sure my volume's up. Are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can, yes. And thank you. So I can, the video takes hours, but I did get the audio, but I'm curious, how did you get that audio to me? Because I couldn't forward it on. It kept saying it's too big of an attack.
So what happened is that and again, my bad. If I knew it was, I'll just leave the recording to you next time.
Yeah, and I just, and I didn't know either. And
but
yeah, it's totally my bad too. So, but I just didn't know how you got that audio to come through.
Yeah, so I've been doing everything with my laptop.
Okay.
It just I sent it there. I was able to share it through that. So
okay, yeah. All right, because I was not able to send it. Were you able to send it on to that other phone number? I sent you another phone number.
Let me check right now. Yes, I sent it, but since it's so big, it takes a long time to send. Let me verify.
Okay.
It's still sending now, but okay. I think it might have sent the audio to that.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
But it's still showing as being sent.
Okay, the student sent the audio. Okay.
And then
the audio came through on my phone.
My drive.
And I've never had it come through on my phone. So, but I was able to get it, anyway, it was a mess. So hi, Danae, sorry, we're talking about the recording from yesterday. So yeah, it was just really kind of crazy. But actually what I'm thinking of doing.
And I'm.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm still uploading to the drive.
Okay.
So if I'm able to get those, I'm sending those right after, because I'm doing the video and the audio, which I started the video before. Okay. And I don't want to exit out of it because I've been on it for a while.
No, I agree. So
I'm just gonna let them kind of
go. That's fine, and it's totally fine, and I appreciate it. I just haven't had that happen before. So, and what I'm thinking of doing for these CRAM sessions is I'm thinking of recording them, because it's not like anybody needs to see me necessarily. I mean, there's really nothing special, and I thought maybe I just record them. I want people's interaction, but most people just listen. They don't really have a lot of interaction. And then what I may do is like a question and answer. So like, you listen to it and then, we do a question and answer. I mean, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm meeting the person's needs, because I don't want to teach a class where you're like, oh, I know all that. Yeah. I wish you would have gone over this. So, I definitely want to make sure, and especially with the math today, I want to make sure that if you guys have specific questions that they get asked, because everybody else that's signed up, They're just listening to the recording later. So if you're here, I want to make sure, like, let's walk through it and be sure that you understand it.
Okay.
And same for you, Danae. I just want to be sure that we're meeting everybody's needs, because the whole idea is this is personal. So I want to make sure that is there's a topic that you're not understanding, let's make sure and, you know, have you get to know it for sure.
I scheduled for the state portion of it for the 14th of June.
The 14th. Okay, so you know,
taking...
let me write that down. So when you're done, you know, I would love for you to go out maybe over the weekend and take some of the exams, and then maybe, you know, we talk at some point next week and, you know, kind of go over like what you're missing. So, you know, maybe, you know, we can touch base Monday or Tuesday and you can say, hey, I took these exams. I'll go in and look at them and see what, are there any other like tidbits that I can share with you to make sure you pass?
Sounds great.
Okay. And Danae, when are you testing again? Do you know?
Yeah, normally, let's see, Friday. I usually test Monday, and I haven't been doing well, but I know I will pass. You know? I know it's kind of a waste of money in a sense, but I feel like I go Monday, Wednesday, and then Friday if I don't pass.
Oh wow, you're taking it 3 times a week?
I haven't tried. Yeah, but that's coming. That's the only reason why I wanted to try learning prior. I'm not rotating. But I've heard great things about you, so I'm like, okay, let's give it a shot. And so yeah, this next week I was gonna do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If I pass on Monday, great, and I wouldn't need Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but that was my plan.
All right. Have you had a chance to listen to like the national, and have you been online taking quizzes? Because I'm happy to talk to you separately as well and make sure that, okay, what are you missing? Let's talk about it.
Okay, I know for sure I struggle with brokerage relationships. And I know you told me brokerage relationships. I only got 5 out of 11.
Okay, all right. And so a lot of that we went over yesterday.
And a lot of that yesterday I retained, and I actually did like 4 or 5 pages of decent notes. So I think I'll be okay with that. And then the other section I did forget it. I did pass. So
okay.
Requirements governing
licensing activities. Okay.
Yeah, and we went over that yesterday as well. So like I feel like if I were to just go over what we went over yesterday, I think I would be okay with that.
Okay.
Another one was 1 out of 5. That's licensing requirements. We went over that yesterday as well.
So I think if you go in and take any of our quizzes and then again want to schedule a meeting with me, then I'll go over the information in more detail. And there's no catch. I'm not charging you extra. I'm not trying to there's no catch. I just, let's get you to the finish line. That's the whole idea of this. So today we're gonna do math, and I'll just cater it because you guys are the ones here. I'm gonna talk about the topics that come up on the math, but then we'll obviously spend more time if either of you are not understanding it. It sounds like you're driving, Danae. Are you gonna be somewhere where you'll be able to do like some math on paper?
Yeah, I have my spouse driving for me. I have a pen and paper in hand.
Okay, all right, just checking to be sure. So I'm just gonna start talking about different math calculations, kind of seeing what your baseline is. I think, for me, using my phone, I would say that literally I no longer barely remember how to make 10%, look like 0.01. Because I am lazy and I type in 10 and then I hit the percent button on my phone and it does it for me. So if you're having to do any calculations on your own, whenever you're converting a percentage to a decimal, you just divide the percentage by 100, okay, and move it over. So, you know, if the amount is, if I'm getting paid 2.5%, okay, then all I'm doing is taking that, dividing it by 100, and it'll end up being 0.025. So anytime converting a percent to a decimal, divide by 100, converting a decimal to a percentage, you multiply by 100. And I know that sounds super basic, like you're like, duh, I know that. But honestly, I use my phone so much, I hardly remember how to do that. I just know, you know, basically get it. So throughout the test, you know, there will be a calculator on your screen, but to the best of my knowledge, it does not have the percent button. So you will have to convert them. So just remember, divide if you're converting percentage to decimal, decimal to percentage, multiply by 100. All right, loan to value ratios. So you learned in the national book that, you know, all about loan to value. So today, some of the math that we talk about is national. Some you may never see on Colorado and vice versa, but I'm just covering math as a whole. So when we're talking about loan to value, if a borrower is borrowing, let's say they're borrowing $315,000, and you'll see me look down because I write on my scratch paper. If they're borrowing $315,000 to purchase a $350,000 property, the way that I find out my loan to value ratio, which is a percentage, I'm always dividing the smaller number divided by the larger number. So it would be 315,000 divided by 350,000, which would give me 0.990%. So are you guys seeing that?
Yes, okay. Barely right now, but yes.
Okay, so anytime I'm looking for that percentage, I need to take the smaller number, divide it by the bigger number in order to get that decimal point, because otherwise it's going to come up above 1%, and it's got to be below, because 1.1 would be 100%. So I've got to be below that. So when we're looking for loan to value, again, smaller number divided by the larger number is going to give me the percent. And a lender, the more money you put down, the happier they are, because that ratio changes, and that is less risk to the actual lender because you've put more money down. All right, so something that I went over on the national, I don't think either of you were on that class, but is discount points. And there used to be just a couple questions about discount points. Most people are saying that they are seeing 3 to 7 questions that have to do with discount points. They may not be math related, but talking about what a discount point is. So if I am a borrower and I am paying discount points, typically I'm paying to buy down the interest rate. So I'm basically prepaying some of the interest to get a lower rate. And you'll typically see it like recently when our market, our interest rate rose, and let's say it went from 3.5% to 4%. If somebody hadn't locked in their rate, then what they did is they bought it down. They paid a little bit of a discount point because they had their heart set on 3.5 for 30 years. So a discount point can be used to pay anything from buying down an interest rate to maybe the lender is charging you an extra fee, and in order to get that service, you have to pay a point. So a discount point for the test, 100%, if I say discount point, your brain should slap yourself on the face and say, I need to know the loan amount. If you know the loan amount, it is a percentage of the loan amount, okay? Without the loan amount, I have no idea how much they would be. So let's do one. So if a buyer is purchasing that property for $350,000 and they're getting a $315,000 loan and they're paying 2 points, so that's 2%, 2 points, how much are they paying? So in this case, I told you what the loan is. So the loan is $315,000. We don't care what they paid. We don't care what it's worth. All we care is what is the loan. And then all I do is multiply it by 2%. So the answer is $6,300. Do you see how I do that? Loan amount times discount, and it's a percentage. So if it's 2 points, 2%. Are you both seeing that? Since I only have the two of you, and you guys can just put up your thumbs or whatever you want, however you want to tell me. I'm just trying to make sure, if you guys are understanding it, you'll be the baseline for it, okay? So it doesn't really matter. I think a lot of times they try to trick you. They talk about the assessed value, the appraised value, the original value, the fair market value. Okay, it doesn't matter. What is the loan amount? So now let's do one where we don't have the loan amount. So the home price is $560,000. They are doing a conventional mortgage and they are paying 1 point. So how much are they paying in discount points? So this time I'm not telling you what the loan is. You're going to have to calculate it. So you have to think in your brain, what do I know about a conventional mortgage? 80-20, right? Remember that? So it's 500. So go ahead and try to figure it out. See if you get it. And then if you don't, I'll go over it. Did you get it today?
Okay, I think
if it's 1 point, the 400,000?
4,000.
4,000.
Well, I said a conventional loan.
4,480.
Yeah, 4,480, 4,480. So you take 560,000 times 80%, because that's your loan amount. 20% is your down payment on conventional, 80% is your loan amount. So the loan is 448,000. And then 1% of that is 4,480. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So now let's do the same numbers, but let's do FHA. So it's an FHA loan. So now paying 1 point, how much is that? So you're multiplying 560 times, we know FHA is 3.5%. So the loan amount is 96.5 times 1%.
Is it 5,404?
Yes, 5,404. Are you getting that, Danae?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I don't have to ask you after each one. I guess maybe I should just say, if you're not getting it, tell me, and then I'll go over another one. So when people have said, oh my gosh, there's all these questions, to me, discount points is very straightforward. Do I have the loan amount? Yes or no? Do I figure it out? And then I multiply it. And so I don't find that it's super difficult. And if you were getting an answer that was like, 500 or 50,000, blah, blah. Well, you know that nobody is, paying $50,000 in a discount point. So, you can also kind of use your brain in that spot and be like, yeah, I don't think this is right. So discount point, have to know the loan amount, and you multiply it by whether it's 1 point, 1%, 1.5 points, 1.5%, 2 points, 2%. Okay. All right, the next concept is equity. And I'm sure you both understand it. If I have the house and it's 560,000 and I owe 400,000, that's my mortgage. My equity is the difference between what it would sell for, 560 minus 400. So the equity would be 160,000. And if somebody says they're taking out a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, okay, they're pulling some portion of that 160,000. It's typically going to be at a higher interest rate. It's not going to be at the normal housing rate. It's going to be a little bit higher, but you're basically getting the opportunity to use the equity in your home to buy a car, put a kid through college, finish a basement, landscape your backyard. You know, instead of having that money there and not able to use it, a home equity line of credit is how you are able to use it at that point. Now, if a property is appreciating, so if it's going up in value, your equity is going up, and that's great. That's what we want. We want to buy a house and have it raise in value. Depreciation is when the market is dropping and your value is dropping, thus your equity is dropping because your loan amount doesn't change. If you still owe 400, okay, bummer, but you still owe 400. So if 560, if it starts dropping and gets down to 500, now your equity is only at 100,000. If you were selling at that point, you'd be losing equity. If it goes up, you'd be gaining equity. So again, and if you take a HELOC, a home equity line of credit out, it's a second mortgage. It is against that equity. So when you go to sell, if you sell at 560, you owe 400, and maybe you borrowed an extra, 60,000, then your equity is only 100 grand at that point. So you would be affecting your actual equity. Down payment, okay? So when I go to buy a house, I just went through this with an agent this morning. Her client is buying a home, and I think I can look at the text and see what we said today about it. She is getting down payment assistance. So let's say the home is $250,000, because believe it or not, she offered $230,000. It's up in Greeley. So she found a very small, cheap house, okay? So, but let's say it's $250,000. Well, she needs to bring the earnest money. So she has to have that earnest money. That is the money that she is saying, I earnestly want to buy this. So that, let's say she's bringing $3,000, okay? And let's say she's going FHA. So let's calculate her down payment. It's $250,000 times 3.5%. So her down payment is going to be $8,750. 250,000 times 3.5%. Well, she will have given $3,000 at the beginning of the transaction, earnest money. So now the rest of her down payment, $5,750, she will be bringing to the table. So this morning, the conversation that I had with my agent was, is she aware that she has to bring the rest of the down payment plus the closing costs from the lender? If she is not getting help through a first-time homebuyers program, or some sort of a grant, then she has to come to the table with $5,750 plus the closing costs, which could be another $5,000. So I had to be sure that she had enough money for down payment, earnest money, closing costs, and then I needed to be sure that she had enough money for an inspection. An inspection costs $300 to about $700. So I needed to make sure that she had that money liquid in order to do that. So again, always making sure that you understand down payment, earnest money, and that earnest money is going towards the down payment. And something that students miss frequently is if the house was, I'll stick with the $560,000 house, if the earnest money was $5,000 and they are doing a conventional mortgage, how much are they bringing for down payment? Okay, for down payment, not total down payment and closing costs, just how much will they be bringing for down payment? They gave $5,000 in earnest money. So the down payment on conventional is 20%. So it's 560,000 times 20%. And then you're subtracting the earnest money because they've already given that. Are you guys getting it?
45,000.
How much?
45,000.
No. So take 560,000. Hold on.
Oh, I was doing I was looking at a wrong number.
Oh,
sorry. What was the purchase price or the property?
560,000.
560. That's fine.
Yeah. So
Okay.
try again. And Danae, I want you to try it too.
Again. Percent. $107.
107,000. Okay.
Yes.
Are you getting that again? I know, Danae, I said I wasn't going to ask you, but I still want to be sure. Did you get 107,000? Maybe she's not there. So I'll just say how to do it. So it would be 560,000 times, we know that the down payment is 20%. So we get that answer, and then we subtract out the 5,000 because we've already given that amount. Okay. All right, so now let's go in and talk about property taxes. So property taxes it's a way that the city funds for like new schools, new roads, a park, a police station. And when we're calculating property taxes, we've got to know what the value is, what the appraised value is, and what the ratio is. Like each state has a different ratio. So typically, we are going to look at for taxes, for property taxes, we want to know what that rate is. So a tax rate is expressed per dollar amount of value. So for example, it'll say $5 per every $100 or $3 for every $100. So if I'm doing a tax rate problem, they'll say the word tax rates are expressed in mills, M-I-L-L-S. And so that is a rate per $1,000. So I think I said it the other day, but let me make sure that I'm saying it clearly here. So if somebody says 30 mills, okay, then what I do is I move my decimal place over 3 spots to actually come up with the 0.03. Okay, this 0 drops off. So if somebody says something is 50 mils, 30 mils, 40 mils, I move the decimal place over 3. And the only way I remember it is a very dumb way, okay? What I do is I pretend, because I'm pretty lame, that these are 3 L's. L. There are 3 of them there. Even though that's an I just pretend it's an L. Okay, so I have 3 of them there, and that way I move it over. So tax rate expressed in mills, it's a rate per 1,000. So you move it over. So let's go ahead and do a sample problem. Okay, so if a property is worth 350,000, okay, I always got to write down what I'm saying so I don't forget. 350,000, and it is assessed at 40 mills. What are the annual taxes? So you're going to have to convert that to figure it out. So it's
14,000.
Okay, so you said it's assessed at 40%. I think I might have not read the rest of the question now that I'm thinking about it. So it's assessed at 40%. The tax rate is $30, 30 mils, $30 per 1,000. So the key is on tax rate, they have to find out what is the property assessed at first. So I take 350,000 and do it on my calculator times 40%. Okay, so they're assessing the taxes at 140,000. Then I multiply it by 0.03 in order to get the $30 per 1,000. So for tax rate, it's first finding out the assessed value times the tax rate. And the tax rate will be expressed in mils, so I move it over. Now, let's say we don't move it over. Let's say we forget. So 140,000 times 30 mils, and I have no idea, right? Okay, so my answer is 4,200,000. Okay, well, that is not the right answer. Nobody's taxes would be that high. So I would just look at my answers and be like, oh my gosh, I forgot to divide. 4,200 would be there. So even if you forget, you will see the answer, and you just have to use the brain and think, oh yeah, my taxes would not be $4 million or 42,000, or, they're not going to be that high. So you will be able to come up with the right answer, even if you forget to divide. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now let's do another thing that for sure is showing up on the test is commissions. Okay, so this may be the only math that really is like exciting. It's how much are you going to make? Okay, so when we're looking at commissions, they're always going to be asking you questions about how much you make, how much the broker's making. They're going to tell you what the split is. They may tell you what your percentage of it is. So there's going to be all different types of things that they'll try to confuse you with. So in order to find out commission, you have to know what is the sales price, what did the property sell for, and what is the commission rate. And so I don't know if you guys know this calculation, but I talk about it a lot in my class, and then I use it for a lot of situations. So I am writing it down right now, and it is value times rate equals income. V times R equals I. Okay. And then if the home is $100,000 and I'm charging 3% commission, I'm making $3,000. Now, if they say to me, you made $3,000 and the home price was $100,000, what was the rate? So if I'm solving for rate, then I have to take the income, $3,000, divide it by 100,000, and I will come up with 3%. So you just have to know which numbers do I have. It is either multiplication, V times R, 100,000 times 3%, $3,000. If they want me to know what the house value was or what the rate was, then it's a division problem. The I comes first. Income divided by rate equals value. Income divided by value equals rate. Have you guys heard that before? Seen that before anywhere?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me tell this person I'm teaching till 5. Okay, so when you're looking at that, we're going to use that for commission. So let's say that I am selling a $700,000 home. So I'm going to start easy, and I'm charging the seller 6%. We are splitting the commission, listing agent and selling agent. And remember, the selling agent, the person selling the home, is actually the buyer's agent. Okay, so the selling agent is the buyer's agent. So we're splitting it equally. And I am on a 70-30 split with my office. I'm making 70%, the office is making 30%. So what am I taking home? Okay.
What was the price of the
700,000.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm calculating it too. And this is why you're getting into real estate, this number right here that you're going to come up with.
$14,700.
Yep, 14,700. So I take 700,000. There's two things that I can do. Some people will do 6% and then divide it by 2 because I'm only doing where it's equal. Like, I don't even worry about it. I just do 700,000 times 3%. And then I was told that I'm getting 70% of the commission. So then I multiply it by 70%. So I'm not a person who does extra math steps because that's like asking me to make a mistake, okay? So 700,000 times 3% times 70. Now, just the other day, I was working with a student and I created a math problem and I tricked them. Okay, so normally, your normal brokerage, you would be getting the 70%, the brokerage would be getting the 30%. But the question said the brokerage firm will be receiving 70%. What is the brokerage firm's commission? So they looked at the problem and they were like, oh yeah, of course the brokerage gets the smaller amount, but they didn't read the question clearly. And it said the broker was getting the 70%. So again, this is where the whole test is trying to trick you. You have to listen, read the question and go, what are they asking me? Okay, they said the brokerage is getting 70, so I have to calculate that. Does that make sense? I mean, I just want to make sure you know not to let them trick you because they're going to try. So in that situation, you got that commission. That was good. Okay, so now let's go a step further. So now the home price is $930. Okay. You are listing it again at 6%. The listing agent is getting 3.2. And I want to know how much the selling agent is making. They are on a 60-40 split, getting the 60%. So $930,000 price, 6% commission, listing agent is getting 3.2. I want to know how much the selling agent is making, and they are on a 60-40 split, them getting the 60%. Are you getting it, Danae?
Sergio? Is it 15,624?
Yeah, 15,624. So you're definitely getting it. So the trick was, I didn't tell you what the selling agent, the buyer's agent was receiving. You had to take 6% minus 3.2 to get 2.8 and then multiply that by 60%. Okay. So definitely commissions questions. You have to read what's the split, what are they asking me? And then if they say that they paid $900 for the house, they sold it for $930. I mean, again, we need to know what is it selling for and then what is the rate. And if they don't tell us the rate, then we're going to have to figure it out. So now let's do one where they do not tell us what the rate is. Okay. So I am making $18,000 and the home price is $600,000. What is the rate that is charged, that I charged? So that's where you have to go back to the income that I divided by V equals R. So we know the income, $18,000. And then we're going to divide it, income divided by value, divided by 600,000. And what do you get? Are you getting it?
Not yet.
Okay, so 18,000 divided by 600,000, and you're looking for a percentage.
Oh, I see. Is this 3%?
3%, yes. So
Yeah.
18,000. So that's where that formula, if you remember it, even if we're talking about a cap rate has to do with investment property. If I know what the income, what do they get out of the property in a year, and I divide it by the value, I'm going to get that cap rate. And if someone is buying an investment property, they're looking for a cap rate of 5 to maybe 8% right now. They'll be lucky to get 5, but that's what they're looking for. So if a property, if an investor says, oh, the property's way too expensive, it's because they're not going to get a good cap rate. So they'd either have to raise the income on the property, so they'd have to raise the rent of everyone to get a better percentage on the cap rate, because it's income divided by value, whatever they pay for it, to give them that cap rate. So that's where that comes into play. All right, so commission, we got that. We know commission is always negotiable. And we did a couple examples. So now let's talk about net proceeds. So a seller may ask you, how much am I going to net? So net means how much are they going to get after they pay everything, the loan off and all the closing fees. So the bottom line is, I personally do not do a net sheet unless my seller asks me, and then I have the title company do it, because I don't want to be liable for giving an estimation of what they're going to receive when I don't know the expenses exactly. So I will typically turn to a title company and ask them to give me the net proceeds. When I say the word net proceeds, your brain should go, what kind of a listing uses net, the net? And that is a net listing where I tell you that I need to net 100,000. Anything that I net above 100,000 is yours to keep. Okay. So just being sure that you understand that.
Is that legal in Colorado?
It is legal in Colorado, discouraged, but all 4 types of contracts, exclusive right to sell, exclusive agency, open listing, and net listing, are all legal in Colorado, but discouraged.
Okay, I see.
Because of course I would work really hard, for that. I mean, for sure. Now, there is occasionally a question that comes up, and, even though there's only 5, 7, 9 math problems, I'm going, I don't know which 7 or which 5 are showing up. So I'm going over things that you may never see, which thank God if you never see it. But people get really confused. So if it says that the sales price of a home is $150,000, and it says that they are charging 7% commission, okay, then what am I trying to say? I'm trying to tell you something. I'm trying to, I was going to give you an example of something. Oh, then like what would be their proceeds, So then it's a matter of, okay, well, I can't take 150,000 times 7. So I'm going to have to take 150,000 times 0.93, because the home sold for that amount, and then on that amount we paid the 7% commission. So let's just do it together so you understand what I'm saying. If the home's 150,000, I didn't pay 7%, because then the home would have had to have sold for more. So I'm trying to find out, what was the home price? So the home price is, I take 150,000 and I multiply it by 0.93, because I want to know what 93% of the price is because when I add the 7%, that's 100% sales price. So the home sold for 139.5, okay? And that's because then I had the opportunity, and the way you see if you're right, you take that times 7%, add it to it, and you end up at 150,000. So if you're ever really confused and not really coming up with that number, instead of going off the 6 or 7%, go off of 0.93, 0.94, and then, in worst case scenario, if somebody says to you, the home was 100, or the home was $100,000 and you paid $6,000 in commission, and you're trying to figure out, or, you know, we don't know the price of the house, but we know they paid 6% and they made $6,000, and it lists all these home prices. Worst case scenario, you just take out your phone and you go 100, let's say one of the sales prices is 150,000 times 6%. Well, that's 9,000. So that's not the right answer. Then you go to the next one. You get 90,000 times 6%. That's 5,400. So we're close because the commission was 6,000. So then I look down the sheet and I go, oh, here's $100,000 home times 6%, $6,000. So bingo, I find it. So if worst case scenario, if you can't like deduce it, just start doing it by hand and you will be able to get it. And for those of you, if you have tested, you will realize that you do have time. Most people do not run out of time when they're taking the test. I mean, I'm not saying that all of them don't, but most don't. Okay.
You have not met me.
Oh, okay. All right, then. Well, you know, and that is totally fine. So, you know, but it, you know, and I think sometimes I think it's important to not second guess. What do I know to be true? Okay. So when I hold up my water bottle, I know it is big, it is purple. I know it has a black lid, not sure what's inside it. Okay. Now let me go answer the question. And then if they're asking, you know, I have to say, okay, they're asking me about color. Let me go back and take a look at it. But what you do is you get so excited. You're like, oh my gosh, I know this because I know the bottle's purple, but they're asking you what color the lid is. So again, you read it, but don't overanalyze it. Otherwise you'll be like, well, I don't know. Do you think they mean the lid or the bottle? So you have to go back and look. What are they saying? Are they specifically saying the body of the water bottle, the top of the water bottle? And again, I seem like I'm over explaining it, but that's how tricky they are. All right, when it talks about the buyer needs funds for closing, we're not determining that. The lender is calculating that, okay? The title company is going to help us and do a lot of our prorations for us. So when we're looking at how much is owed and, you know, what's on the settlement statement, the title company is going to have calculated and prorated a lot of that amount. So as we go through here, I'm going to actually go through and we're going to create a seller column, debit and credit, a buyer, and a broker. Because in Colorado, we use a 6-column worksheet, which includes the broker column. In reality, we don't do that. Oh my gosh, it's so dumb that you get tested on it. But we are actually responsible, and that broker column is like a title company. That's what they're, so if money goes into the broker column, it's because it went into the title company and then it's going to have to be paid out. So I'll go through that here in a little bit. I just wanted to kind of touch on it. Transfer tax. So when we're talking about transferring a property, when real property is sold, there's typically a tax, you know, a transfer tax. It depends on who pays for it. In our contract, you know, it's paid on the sales price, but who pays it is negotiable. That's something to remember. Again, taxes are typically, you know, in a rate of like, you know, $5 for every 100. They're going to be expressed as a rate. PITI, we talked about over the past couple days, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. If a loan is a straight loan, a fixed loan, it is amortized over a period of time, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and it's paid off, amortized, killed off slowly, okay? A loan is considered to be fully amortized and done at the end of the loan term. Most people, you know, they typically, if they pay off their loan early, they have made what is called extra principal payments. So if our loan is PITI, so if we've got PITI, let me draw it out here, okay? Taxes and insurance, so it's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Taxes and insurance are paid, the amount comes in yearly, and then we divide it by 12 to add it to our payment. So on a fixed mortgage, the principal and the interest stay the same through the life of the loan. Okay, now some of the questions that come up, and I'm going to go, and what I'm going to do is, do you guys have your national book with you? If you don't, it's totally fine. I'm just asking. If you,
I don't.
You don't. Okay, that's fine. So,
No.
but I want to do at least one math problem on the mortgage factor chart. So this should ring a bell to both of you. You've been in class or taken the test recently. So can you agree that there is a mortgage factor chart in your little cubby, correct?
Well, let me get my book.
Okay, well, you don't, I can tell it to you, but I'm just asking you, when you went and took the test,
okay,
there was a mortgage factor chart sitting there, correct?
Honestly, I don't remember because I took the one in Oklahoma.
You're national. Oh yeah, you're only doing state. I remember.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, for Danae, because I want to make sure I cover this for the math, you will have to do some sort of mortgage factor calculation. So basically, they're going to tell you the price of the home. So I'm going to use 700,000. And they are going to tell you that it is a 30-year loan at 5%, okay? So 30-year loan at 5%. So the way you do a mortgage factor question is you take 700,000, divide it by 1,000, and then you have to go find your mortgage factor in the chart, okay? So I'm holding it pretty close, but I don't know if you can see it. So you would be looking for 5%, and then you would go over to the 30-year column, okay? And you're looking for the mortgage factor. And the thing that I think most people make the mistake on is they think they're going to use the number 5%. That is not true. We are looking for what are we multiplying it by. So I just looked on my chart, a 5% interest rate, 30-year term, the mortgage factor is 5.37, okay? So let's see if I'm buying a $700,000 home, going to divide by 1,000, so I get 700 times the mortgage factor of 5.37. So my principal and interest on that payment is $33,759. So Danae, for the math, if you're looking to go back on the national side, the mortgage factor questions are on page 221 of the yellow modern real estate book. Okay, so mortgage factor, I have to look at the chart. I have to know what the interest rate is, and is it a 15 or 30-year loan? And if I forget to divide by 1,000, which is easy to do, and I take 700,000 times 5.37, I'm going to get a payment of $3,759,000. Okay. Well, nobody's payment's that high. So I would automatically be like, oh crap, I must have done something wrong. And then I would just look down at the answers. And when I divide by 1,000, then I come up with 3,759. So definitely need to know how to do a mortgage factor chart question for the national. All right, let's go. Let's just review. An acre is 43,560 square feet. There's 640 acres in a section. A mile is 5,280. You live in Denver, 5280. And we always round our answers on the final answer. So when you're doing a math problem and you're going through the math problem, you do not round early. You only round at the very end of the calculation. Some Colorado specific items are, if it doesn't tell you, Colorado year is 365 days, okay? And on the national, it's 360. So every month has 30 days. On the Colorado, okay, so Colorado being different, again, you have to actually write down the months. I'm writing them down right now: January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Okay, so you write down all of the months and you start, if you don't know this trick, it's your knuckles. So you start on every high knuckle is 31, okay, 31 days. So January has 31, down low, February 28, March 31, April's in the valley, 30, June is May is up high on the high knuckle, 31, June in the valley, 30, July, 31, okay? And because your knuckles come together, okay, July, August has 31 as well. September's in the valley, 30. And then most people get October and December as 31 because they remember Halloween and New Year's Eve. So November has 30. So you are actually going to calculate the days, because on the Colorado test, they will have an answer that is 1 day different. And if you didn't calculate it right, you will be wrong. And remember, on the Colorado test, it's boss. Buyer owns the day of closing. Okay, so the buyer, not boss, the buyer owns the day of closing. Sorry, I don't know why I said that. Okay, buyer owns the day of closing. And on the national, the seller owns the day of closing. Okay, so again, if the question says something different, you go off what the question says. But if I'm taking the national test, it's a 30-day month, 360-day calendar year, seller owns day of closing. Colorado test, 365, figure out my days, and buyer owns the day of closing. So does all that resonate, hopefully, at some level? Okay, that would be, the goal. So now let me go in and let's talk about debits and credits, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to share my screen. Not that it matters, but I think it will help you to create a chart. That wasn't the screen I was wanting to share. Let's see if I can share this one. Are you seeing the one that says seller, buyer, broker?
Yes.
Okay. So the reason I put this up is because I want you to try to create your own sheet. I want you to try to understand who pays for what. I'm not going to fill it in while we go, but I just wanted you to see you should have a sheet. So as I mention the items, you go, okay, where does that go? Okay, so you can fill it in. I've done it where I've filled it in before, but I'd like to see that you do that. So when someone is buying a home and they're paying $700,000, where does that go on the debit and credit sheet? So the purchase price, where does that go? And if you don't want me to teach it this way where I keep asking you, I'll just tell you, because Danae is driving, I think. And,
no, that's fine.
Okay. So where would you see the purchase price?
The purchase price would be under the debit of the buyer.
Okay, and I can do it. I can do it too. Oh, that's not very big. Let me see if I can make it bigger here. Hold on. Debit of the buyer. Okay, hold on. Okay, so purchase price, okay, would go there. And then is it a single entry or a double entry? So
it's a double, because it could be on the credit too, because that's what the seller's gonna get.
yeah, the seller, so it's always a double-sided. Yeah, the seller's getting the full, 700,000, whatever, and the buyer is being charged the full 700,000. Okay, so it's on both statements, seller and buyer. Earnest money, where is that showing up?
The earnest money should be is it a credit to the buyer?
Credit to the buyer, so the earnest money goes in here. Okay, and that money is going to be used towards their down payment. So if the amount is 700,000, the buyer is trying to collect money to make up 700,000. But in Colorado, the earnest money is held by the broker, which is the title company. That's how you want to think about it. So the earnest money is debited from the broker and then given to the buyer.
Right.
Okay. All right, the new loan. If the buyer is getting a loan, where is that showing up?
That's gonna be under the debit.
Nope, the buyer is credited the new loan. They're getting the money falls out of the air, okay? And it shows up in their credit column. Because remember, they need to come with the whole amount in order. And so some of it's earnest money, some of it's the loan, some of it's down payment. So the loan, if it's coming from a lender, it just floats in, okay? If it is coming from the seller, okay? So it's a single entry item. If it buyer credit, the loan amount. But if the loan is coming from the seller, so if it's an owner will carry, a purchase money mortgage, or an assumption, if they're getting the money from the seller, the loan is still a credit to the buyer, but now the seller would be debited, okay? So owner will carry, assumption, okay? Any of those would be coming from the seller, okay, to the buyer. Actually, it's a debit. I have it wrong, sorry. It's a debit to the seller. So the seller is going to give the money for the loan to the buyer, okay? Does that make sense?
Yes, I guess what I'm kind of seeing is you just focus on where the money came from, right?
Right. So for example, if the seller has a current loan, okay, I show it here, they're going to be debited, because if the purchase price is $700,000, okay, and they have a current loan of 500, they have to be debited that. They're not getting the whole 7. There's money that's going to come off of it, okay? So the money that's going to come off of it is their current loan. So it's in the seller column only. It's not coming from the broker. It's not coming out of the clouds. They just have to pay off their current loan. But if the loan is being given from the seller to the buyer, then it is credited. It's a debit seller, credit buyer.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So taxes, okay. So we're going to assume that taxes are paid in arrears, okay? So we're going to pay 2022 taxes in 2023. So if they're owed, okay, and they haven't been paid, then that would be a lien if the seller didn't pay them. So the seller has to pay, and if we're using the word pay, we're using the word debit. So they're paying their current taxes, okay? So if they have lived there January, February, March, April, May, 5 months of taxes, they are going to be charged, and they're going to credit the buyer, okay, the taxes. And that is so that when, I guess I can put it on the same line, hold on. So that when the buyer goes to pay the taxes in 2023, they lived there June, July, August, September, October, November, December. They lived there 7 months, but they received the money for the time the seller lived there in 2022. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, and the buyer doesn't have to collect the rest of the year's taxes because it's going to be in their PITI. It's going to be part of their payment. It will be going into an escrow account so that when it's due next year, it's there. Okay. So the seller is being charged for the time they've lived there, and they're giving a credit to the buyer because that is something that will be paid at a later date. Okay. Are we good? Now,
Yeah.
if they ask you a question, let's say we're closing in January and the seller has not paid the taxes for the preceding year. So for the 1 month in January, buyer needs the money because they're going to owe 11 months of taxes. That'll be taken out of their payment. Seller lived there for a month. But if the seller if they owed for 2021, okay, and they hadn't paid their taxes, then that could put a lien on the property. So the seller has to pay the taxes for the previous year. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so preceding year, seller has to pay it, and because that's a debt, that's going to put a lien on the property. Current year, if they're paid in arrears, they're going to pay for the time they lived there this year. All right, loan fees. So anything that has to do with the loan, the origination fee, which could be a percent, a discount point, the appraisal, the loan closing fee, the lender's title policy, anything that has to do with the loan that the buyer would owe because they need the loan, they hired the lender. So any of the loan fees, okay, are a debit to the buyer. Buyer has to pay those because they are the ones needing the loan, okay?
All right.
But it's only the buyer. They're not credited to the seller. They're not credited to the broker or the title company. They're just paid directly to the lender. Interest on the new loan, okay? So if I am closing, let me pull out my little paper here so I make sure on this. So if there's interest on the new loan, so one of the things that people don't understand is if I am closing June, let me write it down, June 5th, okay, and I am closing on the property as a buyer, okay, I am going to take possession in Colorado. I own the day of closing. So June 5th through June 30th, I owe the interest on that loan. So typically I'm going to bring that as part of my closing costs. And then my first payment will not be due until July 1st. So you'll hear sometimes that a buyer's payment isn't due for a month or two. It depends on when they close in the month. If they close towards the beginning, right at the beginning, typically they'll have a payment due, they'll skip 1 month. If I was closing June 29th, I would bring 2 days of interest, the 29th and the 30th. Then at the closing table, they would make me pay all of July 1 through 31. And then my first payment would be due August 1st. So with that being said, okay, I'm gonna show you here. The reason that is because on August 1st, okay, so we're closing June, I don't know if you can see that, June 29th. So I owe the 29th and the 30th interest. Then I owe all of July, day 1 through day 31. And then my August 1st payment is actually, you know, a lot of times, whether it be August 1st, September 1st, it's always in arrears. So I'm paying the interest for the month before. So if they collected July 1st, I may not have a payment till September. Otherwise, I would bring in 2 days at the end of June. I would not have a payment in July because my August 1st payment is going to pay the interest in arrears, okay? It's a tough concept, but you kind of have to understand when I make that payment is for the interest last month. Does that make sense? Hopefully, okay. All right, interest on a new loan, okay? So if a buyer owes those few days of interest, that would be a debit in their column, interest on the new loan, okay? So because it's their fee, it's a debit, and it's prorated based on when closing is. All right, let's see. What if we had interest on an assumed loan? Okay. So on an assumed loan, the interest due, the seller would pay the interest due for the time they lived there. They may give it to the buyer so they can make the full payment, but it'll be prorated at closing. The title company's fee to close the loan, so that is the fee they charge to sit at the table, pass the papers, go over everything, and get it notarized. It's very typical that that is a shared expense, that is shared 1/2 each by buyer and seller. But in our market lately, we've had buyers pay for both sides. So it is a negotiable item on the test. But if it was split in half, then the closing fee, the title closing fee, if I can spell it here, would be a debit to both parties, because the buyer would be paying half of it and the seller would be paying half of it, okay? So title closing fee, again, I just gave you an example that it would be split on both sides. All right, when we get title insurance, the owner pays for a policy, okay, to make sure the title is clear and good. And the lender typically wants a policy to make sure that they are protected because they have a loan on the home and they want to make sure that they have title insurance as well. So the owner's title policy, owner's title is paid for by the owner, by the seller. That is paid at closing. And it is for before the sale. It is not for after, it's for before. And then the buyer pays for the lender's title policy because they're the one who needs the loan. They're the one who has the lender. So they typically pay for the lender's title policy. If there is a special assessment, I'm moving into a condo and they're going to redo the sidewalks or the roof, typically the seller would be responsible for the special assessment because they live there still. It's still their property. Sometimes if a special assessment comes up right before closing, the buyer will pick up some of it because they're the ones who are going to benefit. But for the test, typically the special assessment would be in the seller's column as a debit because they are the ones owing it and because they are the current owners. If the buyer is assuming it or they're going to pay a portion of it, obviously the buyer would be debited as well. The notary fee, okay, so it depends on what we're notarizing and who needs the notary. So if the seller is needing the deed notarized, they would pay for that notary fee. If whoever needs the notary is the person that's going to pay for it. So, you know, a notary could be on either side of the deal, okay, if they're having to bring somebody in. But typically it's going to be on the seller's side because they're the person that wants to be sure that when they sign the deed, grantor, grantee, grantor has to sign it, grantee has to receive it, that's notarized. So they're the ones looking for that. The recording fee is, you know, typically, you know, the seller will be debited but it can be a fee that whoever it benefits. So if it's benefiting the buyer, then it would go in the buyer column. So that's one that can go either way on the actually who's going to be charged for it. So the recording fee, just always think, okay, I got to see who is going to be the party that's going to be affected. HOA fees and dues, the seller has to be current, otherwise it'll create a lien on their property. And if the seller has prepaid okay? So if they've paid in advance, then remember, prepaid seller will get a credit. So if the seller has prepaid, HOA prepaid dues, then they're going to receive a credit for the time that they are not living there. And we're going to do some specific math problems here in a minute, but just so you know that, okay? So HOA, if it's prepaid, seller credit. If they owe it, seller debit. So be aware of that. Rent. So if the seller if this property is an investment property and they are collecting rent, then that rent is going to be paid out from the seller to the buyer. Buyer's going to get the credit, and it's going to be prorated. Closing on the 5th of the month, closing on the 15th, seller gets the first part of it, buyer gets the second part of it. A security deposit. So if there is a tenant, the seller has to give, they have to pay the security deposit and give it to the buyer as a credit, so that when the tenant moves out, the buyer has the $2,500 security deposit. Oh, hold on. And they must have gotten kicked out. Okay. So that security deposit is a debit to the seller. They have to give it, pay it to the buyer, so they have it when the tenant moves out. Seller concessions. So these are items like, maybe I'm giving you a couple $100 to paint the fence. Maybe I'm gonna give you $500 to replace a window. So any type of seller concessions is something that the seller is paying. So they're paying the concessions and they're giving them to the buyer to pay for it at a later date. The window, the paint, the fence, whatever. So any type of concessions is a debit seller, credit buyer, and it's the amount that the seller has agreed to give the buyer within the terms of the loan. They cannot just hand the money. It all has to be approved through the lender. Now the broker's commission, all right? So seller typically is paying the commission, okay? So the commission, again, is always negotiable, and that is an item that will be credited to the broker's column. It's going to come in to the title company, and then they will disperse it. Remember, they can't pay me directly. They have to give it to my company, who then allows it to come to me. So it's a seller debit, broker credit, because it's coming into the title company, and then the broker, it will get dispersed from there. Again, think of the broker column like a title company, that they're getting the money in. Now, occasionally, maybe a buyer is paying a portion of the commission, but typically, unless it's worded, the seller is paying the commission, it's negotiable, it's being credited to the buyer. Attorney fees, whoever hires the attorney is going to pay for it. Okay, so depending on who's hired, that is who will pay. Water and sewer. So that's typically an item that will be prorated. So the seller is going to owe for the time they lived there, and then the buyer will get credited to pay the bill monthly, quarterly, every 6 months, etc. So water and sewer is a prorated item. Now, if it is paid in advance, remember, if the seller has prepaid the water bill, then they're going to get a credit back for the time they did not live there. So definitely make sure you're seeing that. So other fees that might come into the broker, if you're thinking about, hey, well, what else would be in that broker column? Anything that the title company would collect and pay out at a later date. So they may take in some HOA stuff and then pay that out at a later date. So there are other things that they might pay out at a later date. So again, just be trying to pay attention to, is that money that is going to go to the title company, thus the broker, and then be paid out at a later date. All right, so now let's go in and talk about any questions before I go on.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to talk about a few other topics that come up that I think are challenging for students. There's typically only one question. So Danae, you've taken the test recently, correct? I mean, you've recently taken it, am I right?
Correct.
Okay, so with that being said, you know, have you seen a question about GIM, GRM, anything like that? Gross rent multiplier, gross income multiplier?
I did see one of each.
Okay, so we're just going to talk about it to make sure you understand. I can stop sharing my screen, that's fine. Okay. All right, so when we're looking at a gross rent multiplier, and just so you know, that is in the yellow book, you know, you can look it up as well. Let me see what page it's on, just so that if you do want to, you know, coincide it. So that is on page 321. And when we're talking about gross rent, we're talking about a 1 to 4 residential unit property. And that rent is monthly. So whatever they're looking for a monthly rent, gross rent multiplier, it's going to be a high number because it is a monthly rent. If it's an annual gross rent multiplier, it's going to be a smaller number, you know, like 5 to 20 or 30. So an example is if I'm trying to figure out the gross rent multiplier, I take the price of the property. So I'm going to use, just for ease, $100,000 property, and the rent is $10,000. Okay, so if the rent is $10,000 annually, okay, annually, then I'm going to divide it by 10,000, and that is my gross rent multiplier, but it's my annual multiplier. Okay, so it's sales price divided by monthly rent. Okay, so if I'm doing it $100,000 divided by, let's just say the monthly rent is 800, I'm going to get a much larger number. I'm going to get a GRM of 125. So when we're looking at that, we've got to listen for the words. Are they looking for the annual or the monthly? And then an annual gross rent multiplier will be a lower number. Okay, 5 to, you know, again, 20 or 30, and a monthly gross rent multiplier will be a much higher, like 80 or above is what it will be. So gross rent multiplier, sales price divided by gross monthly rent, 1 to 4 units. If we have a property that is 5 or more units or a commercial property, it works differently. Then we need the annual income. So to find a gross income multiplier, a GIM, then we know 5 or more units, commercial property, it's going to be a bigger number. Okay, you know, I mean, sorry, it's going to be a smaller number, but I need the annual income. So annual always creates a smaller number, monthly always creates a bigger number. So if I have a property on page 321, it uses an example. The property is 155,000. The annual income is 15,000. So I take 155,000 divided by 15,000. I'm going to get 10.33 gross income multiplier. So one question. So you have to know, is it monthly or is it annual? And then all I do is take the price and divide by either the monthly income or the annual income. So those are the kind of the key things there to remember. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a problem, and you know, I'm probably just going to talk you through it because I think it'll be easier. So if I tell you that the average gross rent multiplier is 13, okay, so when I say 13, it's a low number. So your brain goes, oh, that's annual. That's annual. So I know that's annual. And if I say that, you know, John is getting $1,000 a month in rent, okay, like, okay, $1,000 a month. So that's 12,000 annually, because it's a small number. If I'm trying to figure out what is the price of the house, then I take the small number, 13 that they gave me, okay? And then I'm multiplying it by 12,000 because that's the annual income to get 156,000 value of the home. And I know that I may be talking way above your head, okay? But I'm trying to talk it through so that if you go back and listen to it, you could follow along like with a piece of paper to try to figure out, do I understand what that is saying? Are you understanding a teeny little bit about GRM versus GIM? To me, it's just one more question you might be able to get right.
Yeah, so with GIM.
Yes, briefly.
Okay.
Go ahead, Sergio.
No, he just said yes.
Oh, no, yeah, I was just agreeing.
Okay. So from what I heard just now, you said 56,000 times 13, or the other way around.
13 times 12,000, which was the annual income to get the house price. I was trying to figure out what the price of the house was.
Okay.
Okay. Now, normally, if I get the price of the house, then I'm either dividing by the monthly income or the annual income. Okay.
Okay.
So again, I know that like that one is kind of a vague thing that people are like, I don't really know. So, you know, you try to think GIM, 1 to 4 units. I'm going to use the monthly income, it's a division problem, and I'm going to come up with a number. And if it is a rent multiplier, you know, monthly, it's going to be high. If it's an annual, it's going to be lower. So I don't know if that helps, but you know, it's definitely a hard thing to teach. So I just trying to make sure you might be able to get one of the, if the one question comes up, you can get it right. Okay. But you're thinking annual, monthly, multiply it by 12 or not, divide. That's pretty much what you're looking for. All right, now let's try another problem, a different type of problem. So sometimes they'll ask you a question about interest, and they'll be trying to figure out how much interest you paid, or they try to figure out, do you know in your payment, what was that interest amount? So let's do an example. I'm going to say that John got a loan. So this, you know, I'm just using a simple example for $43,000. Okay, so $43,000, and he paid 6% interest. Okay, and he paid it off in 8 months. 8 months. So how much interest did he pay? So the first thing I have to do is figure out how much is his annual interest. So 43,000 times 6%. Okay, so he paid $2,580 yearly. Okay, so I'm going to divide that by 12. I want to know what the monthly interest is. It's $215, and he paid it off in 8 months. So the interest that he paid is $1,720. So anytime they give you a loan and they say you're paying 6% interest, 5%, whatever, that's going to be your yearly interest. Have to divide it by 12 to figure out monthly, and then how many months am I calculating? Hopefully that is resonating a little. Okay.
Yeah, that was a nice breakdown. That made it make sense.
Okay. All right. And so, and again, you just have to, you know, I think sometimes we get caught up in, we get caught up in the words quarterly, monthly, annually, you know, so you're going to go into it assuming annual, but then if they give you a monthly payment, then we know we probably got to divide it by 12. I mean, multiply it by 12. If they're asking for a monthly answer, then I probably have to divide it by 12 to get down to that. All right, let's see what the next question is. I just have written up various questions to try to ask you. One of the things they talk about, which isn't really a math problem, but what they do is they talk about adjusted cost basis. So like you buy a home at the original value, you put in a bunch of upgrades, then, you know, the land value never changes. And then they come up with, this is the basis for the price of your home. So let's say the basis of your home is 500,000. Then it says, hey, you're going to buy a new property. and you're going to do a 1031 exchange. So you're going to defer your taxes, okay, by doing that 1031. 1031 exchange defers, it doesn't eliminate taxes. And with a 1031, you're using a qualified intermediary. You're looking for like kind of properties. So if they're not like kind, you can give something called boot, something additional, a car, extra, something to make it like kind, and you're deferring your taxes. But if your basis started at 500,000 and then you did a 1031 exchange for a property at 700,000, and they come back and say to you, what is your basis? Because you did a 1031 exchange, your basis is still at 500,000. You don't get to up it because you bought a bigger property. So whenever you go back and have to pay taxes, it's going to be on that initial number. And I know these are sucky things to talk about and hard to understand, but I'm just trying to, like, you know, and Danae, if you've recently taken the test, or Sergio, if you can remember a question and you're like, I had no idea how to do it, I'm happy to answer it. So definitely, you know, make sure that you bring it up. All right. Did you feel like you got questions about, you know, here's the loan amount, here's the payment, what's the interest rate? Did you get quite a few questions on that?
Oh, it was more so. Sorry, Sergio. It was more so questions like 3-2 split. Like, I understand that now. It took me a while. But there was a couple questions about splitting commissions and stuff like that.
Okay.
That took me a while, but I finally got it. All you got to do is add splits together and then divide by the whole number. Whoever has a higher split, gets the more commission. I get that now, but I didn't.
Okay.
Before.
All right. Sergio, what about you?
For me, it was kind of easier. It was kind of easy for me, that part, because I've already done some transactions. So I understand the commission part and the splits, and since that's a big part of it. And then the other questions, yeah, I would say I got it pretty fairly. Just the last parts, that's where it was a little more information than what I could take in at the time, if that makes sense.
Sure.
But
okay.
yeah, I feel like I got a good idea of all of it.
Okay, all right. You know, I'm still going on. I just am trying to make sure that I'm addressing certain things. So let's do now, I'm going to give you a problem. So it says if John's quarterly interest payments is $150 and the loan is $12,000, what is the annual interest rate? So the key word quarterly and annual. So their quarterly interest payment is $150. And I'm going to have you struggle for a minute and see if you get it, because you know, some of the questions are complicated.
Can you repeat the question one more time, please?
Sure. If John's quarterly interest payment is $150 on a $12,000 loan, what is the interest payment? Or the interest rate, sorry, the rate, sorry.
$12,000 times 150 divided by 12.
So the quarterly interest payment is 150. So I need to know the yearly interest payment. So there's four quarters in a year. So I would take the 150 times 4. Okay, so that is how much interest that I'm paying in the year. The loan is $12,000. So then I'm trying to find out the rate. And whenever I have a small number and I'm trying to find out a percentage, the income that I'm getting, this is where you would use that V times R equals I. I have income. The income that I'm getting is $600. I'm dividing it by what the loan is, the value of the loan, V. So 600 divided by 12 is going to give me the rate of 0.05%. So it's a 5% interest rate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was doing it wrong at first because I wrote out the quarters of 150, but and then the 12,000, but then I just got stuck at combining, and that's it.
And then, you know, the key was it was quarterly, so you have to know the yearly. So I had to multiply it by 4. Then once I got that, then it's a division problem. Okay.
So 720, okay, divided by the 12, right?
It's 150 times 4, which is $600. And then I'm dividing it by 12,000.
Okay, 600 divided by 12,000. Okay, let me do that.
Equals 5%. Oh, it comes up 0.05.
0.05. All right, I'm gonna run one more time because I'm like really confused. Okay, so the interest rate is quarterly. Okay, no,
the interest is quarterly.
yeah. Okay, each quarter is $150. If you time, so obviously you have to find how much it is annually. So annually it's $600.
Correct.
And then it's annual, you would divide by the 12,000, and that's where you get the 5%.
5%. Yep,
Okay.
that's it. Yep, that's it. All right, so talked about commissions. So let's do one more commission one. So if a home sells for $950, commission is 7%. The agents are splitting the commission, and they are on a 60-40 split, but the salesperson is getting the 40%. How much are they making? So $950,000 home, 7% commission. It is a 50-50 split. They're splitting it equally. And the selling broker, buyer's agent, person selling the home, they're on a 60-40 split, but they're only getting the 40%. So how much are they making?
$13,300.
Yeah, 13,300. Yeah, that's it. So, and are you getting that, Danae?
Yes.
Okay, all right, perfect. All right, so let's see here what other questions that I can ask. Do you remember seeing a question where you would have had to increase the number from 100% to like 110 or 115? Do you remember anything like that? So like if it said the sales price was 100,000 and I paid 15% over, what did I pay? Did you get anything like that?
No, it was more so depreciation.
Okay, so if it depreciated.
An improvement. So I know for a fact that you subtract the improvements, but then after that, I have no idea.
Okay, so let me go to, I'll get you a problem about that. So, if something is depreciating, it's going down in value. And let me just go in here in the chapter and I'll find you a question so that I can ask you about that. that's where, you know, I mean, again, some of this, we're like, are we really going to use this? You know, I mean, I don't really think so, but anyway, you still have to learn it, it appears. So if a property is depreciating, it's dropping in value. And what they're trying to get you to answer and say is, you know, with that depreciation, typically they want to know, is it physical deterioration, functional obsolescence, either external or internal? Then they're looking at what is the economic life of a property. So the example would be if a property was, let me write it down, $420,000, okay, and it had a land value of $90,000, okay, and an improvement of $330,000. So if that improvement is supposed to last 60 years and it's straight line depreciation, so it doesn't change, how much would the property be depreciating each year? So you have to think about, I don't care about the land because the land value never changes. The original price doesn't matter. It says that the value of the improvement was $330. So I take 330 and they say that they want to depreciate it over 60 years, 60. So I divide it by 60. So the value's going down $5,500 every year. So if I say in 5 years, how much has it depreciated? I just multiply it by 5. It depreciates $27,500 after 5 years. So depreciation is like the home is, it's losing value, okay, for whatever reason, doesn't matter what. So then I have to figure out, well, what is the land value? Then the improvement is everything else. So how much is it worth? And then how many years are we depreciating it out? So if this is a property that we're going to depreciate over the next 30 years, then 30 is my number that I'm dividing by. 60 years, 60 is the number to divide by. And that tells me that it's dropping each year that much until the 60 years is up.
Okay, so when it's asking the question, obviously I acknowledge the land and acknowledge the house of the price of you acknowledge the 420,000, you acknowledge the 90,000, but it doesn't really make a difference as far as finding the answer because the answer is in the 330,000.
Because that's the value of the improvement, because land doesn't change. So I can't use the land value and depreciate the land. So I just need the value of the improvement minus the land. And then it's how many years are they depreciating? And then I'm gonna, so if it goes down, you know, if it's 60 years, it's going down $5,500 each year. So if they say, how much has it lost in 5 years, I can figure it out.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense because like we said yesterday, it's not really the question, but what they're asking.
Oh,
so that
absolutely. I couldn't agree.
Yeah, and they throw all these random numbers at you, you know, and you have to pay attention. You figure out what number you should pay attention to.
Oh, amen. I mean, I really hate the test. I think it's a horrible test because it definitely doesn't test intelligence. Because again, if you've heard me say a lot of dumb realtors out there, you're like, wow, how did you pass the test? So it really is just how well do you answer trick questions? Okay. Very hard. All right. So do you want to do, you know, like a problem about prorations for taxes? You know, what kind of problems? I want to make sure that I am addressing, you know, your questions. Anything in particular?
I think we can go ahead and do another interest, maybe.
Okay, another interest question. Okay, meaning trying to find out what the interest rate is.
Yes.
Okay, so let's do this one. It says, what is the interest rate on a $10,000 loan that has a semi-annual interest payment of $450? So the keyword semi-annual payment of $450.
Where we would find the 450 times 2 and then go from there, correct?
Yep, 450 times 2, you're getting the annual rate, annual interest payment. And then from there, you're calculating from there.
9%.
9%, correct. And here's what I say, okay? This is how I do things. If I don't have a clue on that question, so to give you an example, let's see here. On that question, the answers were 7, 9, 11, and 13. So if you are just looking at the problem, so it was $10,000 and the semi-annual's 450, so the annual's 900. Okay, I have no idea what to do. Like, you're just like, oh crap, I have no, then what I do is I take $10,000 and I times it by 7%. And I go, okay, that's $700. So it's got to be more than 7%. And then if I go, okay, let me see if it's 13%, $10,000, you know, times 13%. Okay, that's $1,300. So it's lower than that. I mean, I just literally do the elimination process, because sometimes my brain just doesn't kick in to think like a math person. So then I go, okay, well, I'm just going to figure it out old-fashioned way. I'm going to multiply every answer and see which one I get. Okay. So sometimes you can do that, you know, and I just, you know, I want you to think like, what is the easiest way? Because not everyone is going to be able to convert their brain into a math brain. Okay. So like, here's a question, and these are hard. Okay. And so when I see a question like this, I'm like, I have no idea what to do. I mean, I do because I teach, but like if I, you know, didn't. So if a home sold for 230,000, okay, 230,000, and it sold for 15% profit, okay, what did I pay for the home? Okay. So let's say my answers were 200,000, 250,000, 10,000, or I don't know, 500,000. Okay. Okay, so I paid 230 and I paid 15% more than what it was originally paid for. So you're like, now there's a math way to do it. I don't even need to explain it. We know that the amount cannot be more than what we paid. So 250 is wrong, okay, because we paid 230. Okay, so I'm looking for a number under 230, and then I'm adding 15% to it. So it's not 250, it's not 500, 10 is way too low, so it's got to be 200,000. So sometimes you can just talk yourself through a math problem, never have to do the math. And I find that if you can talk to yourself, you'll be way better off, okay? So let me give you an example. This is not going to be a real math problem. This is just me giving you an example of what I'm talking about. So if it says, if the question says, okay, now I can't think of one to even give you, of course, right? So I'm just trying to give you an example. So if a seller had prepaid the water, so seller prepaid water. So the minute I say prepaid, we know the answer is going to be a seller credit, okay? So one of the answers will say buyer credit. So boom, get rid of that. We're down to 3, okay? If I say they prepaid the water for the month is 30 days. So I write that down, 30 days. And we're closing on the 28th of the month, 28th. Seller prepaid. So they lived there day 1 to day 28. So they owe that. So they're only getting back 2 days. So if I have 4 answers, one of them says buyer credit, totally, that's not it. The other 3 say seller credit. One is a big number, one is a small number, and one is a number that's close to one of the other numbers. So let's see, are they getting a lot of money back? No, they're only getting 2 days back. because they only prepaid for the month and they lived there most of it, so they owe it. They're getting a little tiny credit. So either there will only be one answer left, the small number, maybe there's two small numbers. And then I'm like, oh crap, I don't know what to do. Well, one of them will be, what they'll say is, hey, the small number, okay, one of them has the buyer owning the day of closing, one of them has the seller doing the day of closing. So I think, you know, for you, then you have to go, am I on the national test or am I on the Colorado test? Does that make sense? Yes, maybe. Maybe not. Yes, hopefully. Okay. So the point is, you're not going to have,
Yes, it is.
some of them, you're not going to do the math. You're just going to look and talk to yourself. Prepaid, it's a seller credit. They lived there. They, you know, they didn't live there for a few days, so it'll be a small number. There may only be one answer there that's a small number. So I just want you to get used to talking to yourself in order to try to figure out the answer, because I think that will help you, you know, a ton in your, you know, as you're playing the game here. All right, let me look. I'm looking for like a proration problem. I was trying to see if we could do a few of those. So what I'm going to do is, I've got a document. It is out on our website. It is one of our downloads. You absolutely do not want to print it. Okay, it would be a negative to you to print it. Okay, so you don't want to print it, but it's called Fearless Math, and it's got all of these math questions in it from eons ago, but the principle is all the same. So I'm going to open it and I'm going to share it, my screen with you as soon as I can get there. Hold on. If I can figure out which one it is now that I did it. Hold on. Document. Let's see which one it is. Let me go here. All right. Are you now seeing, let me make my screen a little bigger. Are you seeing a document that's got a bunch of math questions in it? Yes or no?
No.
I mean, you're not?
Or maybe I see the documents, but I don't see the question.
Okay, but you see Fearless Math. You see it says that?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, all right. So you're seeing the right screen. Okay, so this is a document that is out on our website, and I do not recommend that you spend hours and hours on math, because again, there's not enough questions to worry about. But what I'm going to do is I am going to go through. So this is helpful. This is a settlement statement worksheet, and it, again, kind of like what we did, who pays for what. Okay, so that is a helpful document that's out there. And then we've also got ones where we're going to calculate some of the items. So let me go out and try to find a couple here and see if we can. I just want to help you understand how to decipher which, you know, like, how do I find the answer? Okay, so if we're actually trying to calculate it, a lot of these are just debits and credits, but I actually want to get into the calculation of the numbers. So hold on here, trying to find, I had the pages listed and then I changed it. Okay, so let's see if you can do this question that's showing right there. So the seller sold their property for $95,000. They paid the broker a 6% commission. So how much did they pay the broker?
Well, what did it sell for?
$95,000. They paid the broker a 6% commission. So it's pretty straightforward.
5,700.
Okay, yep. So, the answers are there on the screen, and then it says it was just 95,000 times 6%. Okay, so I think you both are getting those pretty easily. I don't see that those are issues for you, okay? Now, if you want to look at this next problem, it says the list price on a property was $275,275. The buyer made an offer of $265. The seller countered at $272.5, and that was accepted. And then it says the seller agreed to pay 7% commission. Who would pay it? So where would it be debited or credited? And what would the amount be? Okay, so I actually, if I think I was showing you the answer now that I see that, okay.
It's not, I don't think it's showing on our screen.
You're not seeing the screen that I'm sharing?
No, we're seeing your documents in this map,
You're seeing what?
like the file folder of documents.
Oh, okay. Let me stop sharing and share the screen again. I'm not sure why you weren't seeing that. Okay, hold on. Let me go back out. Now, are you seeing the right one?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so list price $275, buyer made an offer of $265. They countered at $272.5, and that was accepted. And they paid 7% commission. So how is that going to show up?
It is 19,040 with that being a debit to the seller.
So you're close. Look at the 4 answers there. There isn't your answer. So you did it on the wrong price. So the only price that matters is what they agreed to. So it's $272.5 times 7%.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so it is $19,075.
I did 272, which was,
Oh, instead of
I forgot the
2.5,
5. Yeah.
Okay, and did you get it, Danae? Do you see how we got it? All right, maybe she's not there. Okay, so, and it is a debit to the seller because typically the seller would be paying the commission. All right, so now let's, again, I think Danae said she was getting the commission questions, so I won't keep doing those. The taxes is definitely something that people struggle with. So let's do this question. It says the taxes for the year were 2010. Oh, for the year of 2010, sorry, were $1,080 annually. They're paid in arrears. The closing took place on August 28th. Okay, so let's do this for the Colorado. Okay, and which of those answers is the proration that of taxes that were paid by the seller? So we know it's 1,080. And so you can calculate this out, like, and get real specific, but I have an easy way to do it. And so you would take 1,080, divide it by 12 to find out how much is it per month. So it's $90 a month. And if you take January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, that's 8 months. We're closing at the end of the month. So I'm going to do a full 8 months, and I come up with an answer that is $720. And it's just a few days that we don't have to pay for and, don't owe. So the answer automatically is $710.14. Okay. So I can show you the solution here, but that's including you counting all those days. So what I did is I just did an educated guess, because 8 full months is $720. So I know it's not $803. That's one of the answers. And $645 is too low. So it's got to be $710.14. So are you seeing how I do that without counting all my days? Because otherwise I've got to count 31, 28, 31. I've got to count them all out. So are you seeing that,
Yes.
Sergio? Okay, all right. So that is, I mean, it feels like you're getting it. Now, last time when I taught these sessions, I made them 2 hours, and then I ended up always going over. And so that's why I made these sessions 3 hours, so that I would be sure that, I didn't run out of time. And, I just went over, it didn't really matter. But in this case, there's only 2 of you on, and I've covered the math that typically shows up on the test. Are there other problems that you would like me to go over? Or, I don't want to, just make up things that you guys understand. Are there other things that you feel like you want me to address?
Not really, not right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Danae? Are you there?
Yes, I am here. I'm actually just taking a peek at my test scores.
Okay.
I think, like we said this morning, it all kind of concludes together when with my scores. So it's licensing requirements, duties and powers, brokerage relationships. So it all kind of goes together. I think it's as that one subject that I just need to focus more on.
Okay. And again, go out and listen to the review. You can obviously get a copy of the CRAM. I think the key is trying to go, okay, what do I not know? I wish they would tell you what you missed. Like, hey, dummy, you don't know anything about this topic. But instead, they give you this broad range, and you don't know what you don't know. So that's where, because you went to other schools, you can go in and take our quizzes, and then I'll be able to see, okay, you don't seem to know this. Let's talk about it. So make sure, especially since Sergio, you're taking it again in a week or so, but Danae, you're taking it next week. If you have a specific question, snap a picture of the question and then reach out to me, and I will get back with you and answer. If I can answer in a text, great. If I need to answer in a, give you a call and go over it, I'm more than happy to do that. But again, I'm not going to know unless you go out and take some of the quizzes. I won't know what you're missing.
Okay.
So definitely use.
And that's kind of when
go ahead.
That's kind of when I want to get set up where, because you already told me what quizzes to kind of look into. And
for the
that's
Colorado.
what I'm planning on doing. Yeah, so I can get a better feel of what exactly I need, and just reviewing your audio sessions as well, so I can get as much information.
And Sergio, maybe you just make a point in your phone to say, you need to have taken some of the Colorado quizzes, and then maybe we set up a phone call next week and go over a few of them and what you've missed. Again, I just need something tangible, because I don't know what you don't know. So because when I'm teaching, it's like when I'm teaching a math problem and I say that 10 minus 3 is 7, everybody goes, oh yeah, I see that. But when you're alone on the test by yourself, you're freaking out, your heart is beating. You're like, I don't even know. I have no idea. So I need you to freak out and try to take some quizzes and then we'll talk about it, because then I'll be able to say, oh, you thought this was a subtraction problem. It was multiplication. The answer was 30. You didn't read the question clearly, or something like that. It'll be something along those lines. So I'm trying to determine how can I help you drill those topics in to make sure you pass.
Well, yesterday you actually definitely, even earlier today, you definitely helped me with converting the 6%, like the 6% button.
Oh yeah.
I'm actually in real life, I'm not like Albert Einstein good at math, but I'm actually decent with numbers. So I was actually pretty shocked that I only got 2 out of 8. But it was because of that little trick that they didn't have the percentage button, but I know that. So
yeah, no, I mean, and it's little things. Again, this isn't an intelligence test. No way.
No.
No way. So so why don't you guys, kind of go in, start taking some of the quizzes and exams. And like Danae, if you're taking it Monday, if you have questions over the weekend, just text me and I'll reach back out to you and we'll connect before you go in. Okay.
Okay, I will do that. I'm not shy, so I will be doing so.
Okay, all right. And same with you, Sergio. And then if there's anything else I can do to help, feel free to reach out. I don't mind setting up a phone call and trying to make sure that we get you to the finish line. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Sounds good.
All right. What?
I was just gonna let you know about the the audio. So it says it's only has 39 minutes left for the other session that recorded.
Okay. All right. Well, just see, I'll be sharing this one with you. I convert it right away, and then I usually do it overnight to get it to load up into the drive because it takes forever. So I'm well aware when you said, oh,
I see that.
Forever. Yeah, it does take forever. So, but I will be sharing, the sessions with you as well today. Okay.
Perfect.
All right.
Perfect. And yeah, I'll send you this as soon as I get the chance. I'll send it to the drive.
Okay, I appreciate it. And thanks so much. Okay, wishing you the best.
Of course.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
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 Bye, Danae.